Welcome, Red Knight.
Alright, there we go, little restream. We should be back on track. Yeah, whenever I do that NVIDIA update there, it just resets everything and needs to be reconfigured. So we should be alright now. Let's just see, the go live message and everything else looking good, plugged where I needed to. And we'll get some other posts, Instagram, Twitch stories, whatever, later on. For now, though, we'll start off with some Dune House Harkonnen. Excited to get back to that, and then we'll look forward to good adventures. We'll definitely get to some more than just reading tonight, but some Sunless Sea, some Wasteland, maybe some Hogwarts, stuff like that, maybe some Darkest Dungeon, other chat interaction, things like that. We'll check it out. We'll look forward to it. Let's go ahead and get started with some House Harkonnen for now and see where we left off. Check the audio. Should be okay.
Yes, my lord.
Should be decent enough. And let's pick it up right here where we left off yesterday. Dune House Harkonnen between the Fortnite tournament. On page 165 here. Let's take a look. We left off with the Baron, but he shook his head, angry at the answer forced upon him. Until the witches gave him the cure he desperately needed, Baron Harkonnen dared not strike against the Bene Gesserit. Afterward, however, he would make up for lost time. Alright, that's where we left off. We're looking good here. Live and ready to go. Pretty much. Alright, that'll work. Let's pick it up from there and enjoy it. Other adventures soon to come tonight for this terrific Tuesday. Everything else in place as needed. New cheers, new chat interactions, commands, and featuring stickers again tonight. Been a while for sticker party. We're about a quarter of the way there for our first sticker party, so we'll still look forward to that. Alright, and here we go. Back to it. There is no reality, only our own order imposed on everything. Basic Bene Gesserit dictum. For Jessica, it was like a child's game, except this one was deadly serious. Rustling like bats, hundreds of sisters filled the dining hall, amused to watch the Baron's antics, dodging him as if it were a game of invisible tag. Oh, so they were there, they just can't see them. That's funny. Some crouched under tables, Jessica and Mohayim pressed against the wall. All the women were in silent breathing mode, concentrating on the illusion. No one spoke. They were in plain sight, but the befuddled Harkonnens could neither see nor sense them. The Baron saw only what the Bene Gesserit wanted him to see. On top of the head table stood the dark, aged Mother Superior, smiling like a schoolgirl in the middle of a prank. Harishka folded rail-thin arms across her chest as the pursuers grew more and more frustrated and noticeably agitated. A trooper passed only centimeters in front of Jessica. He waved a life tracer, nearly striking her face. But the guard saw nothing but false readings. On the dial of the scanner, data blinked and flared as the soldier moved past Jessica. Though to him nothing registered on the gauge. Devices could not easily be fooled, but men were different. Life is an illusion, to be tailored to our needs, she thought. Quoting a lesson she had learned from her teacher Mohayim, every acolyte knew how to trick the eye, the most vulnerable of human senses. The sisters made barely audible sounds, dampened their slight movements. Knowing the swaggering Baron was on his way, Mother Superior had summoned the sisters into the great dining hall. Baron Harkonnen believes he is in control, she had said in her crackling voice. He thinks to intimidate us, but we must remove his strength make him feel impotent. We are also buying time for ourselves to consider this matter, and giving the Baron time to make his own mistakes. Harkonnens are not known for their patience. Across the room, the clumsy Baron nearly brushed against Sister Christine, who slid smoothly away. What the hells was that? He whirled, sensing the movement of air, a brief scent of fabric. I heard something rustle, like a robe. The guards raised their weapons, but saw no targets. The heavy-set man shuddered. Jessica exchanged a smile with her teacher. The Reverend Mother's normally flat eyes danced with glee. From her high table, Mother Superior stared down at the flustered men like a bird of prey. In preparation for the mass hypnosis that now smothered the Baron and his men, Sister Christine had allowed herself to be visible to them so she could lead them into the web. But gradually the guide had faded from view as the sisters concentrated, focusing their efforts on these pliable victims. The Baron hobbled closer, his face a mask of unbridled fury. Jessica had the opportunity to trip him, but chose not to. Mohayem moved to glide beside him, said something faint and eerie, "You shall fear, Baron," in a directed whisper that carried only to the fat man's ears. This man she despised so much. Mohayem created a barely visible serration that twisted words from the litany against fear into something altogether different. You shall fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. She walked around him, spoke to the back of his head. You cannot face your fear. It will pass inside you and infect you. He thrashed with his hand as if to bat away a bothersome insect. His expression looked troubled. When we look upon the path of your fear, there will be nothing left of you. Smoothly, Mohayem slipped away from him. Only the sisterhood will remain. The Baron stopped dead in his tracks, his face pale, his jowls twitching. His black eyes glanced to the left, where Mohayem had been standing only seconds before. He swung his cane in that direction, so hard that he lost his balance and fell to the floor. Get me out of here, he bellowed to his guards. 2 troopers rushed to help him to his feet. The squad leader guided them to the main doors and out into the passageway, while the remaining guards continued to search for targets, swinging the snub noses of their laser rifles back and forth. At the threshold, the Baron hesitated. Damned witches. He looked around. Which way back? To the right, my Lord Baron, the squad leader said in a firm voice. Unknown to him, Christine hovered invisibly at his side, whispering directions in his ear. Upon reaching the shuttle, they would find it already set on automatic pilot, ready to take the Baron back through the planet's complex defenses to their frigate in orbit. Unsuccessful, frustrated, helpless, the Baron was not accustomed to such feelings. They wouldn't dare harm me, he muttered. Nearby, several sisters snickered. As the Harkonnens fled like gaze hounds with their tails between their legs, ghostly laughter from the dining hall followed them. Interesting. So that's what really happened there. Alright, we could leave it there, get on to adventures now, but I figured, we don't have any immediate plans here today. We might as well enjoy it, make some good progress in it. I'm not even like a third way through the book yet. There's a lot in this book, so let's keep it up from there. And we'll get a little Instagram and Twitch story post in the meantime, all these House of the Dragon things. Nothing too interesting or speculative discussions for it, but some good posts for it. Alright, also got Wolverine things, sorry. Something or something. 2000 songs are now as old as 80s songs were in the 2000s. That's a good one. Not that I remember many 2000 songs. Alright, live on Twitch for the Instagram, and how about a quick little one for the Twitch stories, just because that is a feature as well. Just a little post of our fun readings here. Good to go. Alrighty. Life on hit users. For Dungeonborn, yeah, I played a good bit there last night. Had some decent Dungeonborn last night. Bought a PvP less rounds. But I had some good. I got the rogue questline done, the rogue hat, so that's done. And a little bit of Fortnite today. Didn't get my rank points back, but I'll just suffer through it a little longer to get the ones past 5 o'clock. And yeah, I don't really perform much better on stream than off stream. I don't really perform much better off stream, so I might as well get to the ranked one here. I was only able to get like a couple shotguns kills, some fist kills, so I might as well just do it on stream despite the lag, to be honest. Magneto power is so OP and unranked. I did win they're unranked fine, but man, ranked is just so challenging as a new player. Anyway, we'll consider all that here soon. Let's keep it up with the next chapter of Dune, House Harkonnen. Look forward to chat with you very soon. We do have brand new cheers available, many fun chat commands, whole big cheer list, and our dragon champions in general here in the Dragon's Roost. Be very exciting to chat with some great Dragonites on this terrific Tuesday. Hope to be live a bit longer tonight. I've only done like 2 hours yesterday, an hour and a half before that, so at the very least I'll do 3 hours tonight for another 3 hours from now. And that'll be great. We could also do some whiskey fun. Maybe I'll save that for tomorrow night or Thursday or something. Tomorrow night would be good for that, after work, not before work. But not much whiskey, just a little celebratory whiskey. Celebrate finally getting those 100 sub points and gifting the about 70 subs or so. Well, I gifted 99 subs, did you see? But this year it was like 70 subs. A lot more than the other like 20 I had done before, 30. However much I had done before. Alright, let us carry on then. Take a look here. Hope that's a decent place for the video for now. Over a few things here, just covers the sigils and things. See those in chat anyway, so yeah, it should be a pretty good place for it for now. And look at some other logos of the thing. I did the starting soon one, at least fix that one. I want to do the other transparency remove for the other logo I had there too, so work on that in a bit here, but for now it's at least more consistent, you know. We'll continue to improve, make more adjustments, but celebrate the Targaryen sigil since we're discussing House of the Dragon. I had my Steam group a lot longer than many of the people, you know, talking trash about it have even watched the show. You know, since 2015 or so. So longer than most people, but anyway, it's alright. Let's keep it up for now. Had our ghostly laughter. Let's pick it up from there. Immobility is often mistaken for peace. Emperor Elrud Corrino the Ninth. With good humor, Romber's new concubine Tessia accompanied him around the grounds of Castle Caladan. It amused her that the exiled prince seemed more like an excited, clumsy child than the heir to a renegade house. It's nice it jumps around, kind of like, you know, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. It jumps around characters and things. pretty often, so it's nice it just goes throughout there without really entitling it too much, like the start of the chapter. I remember Game of Thrones, it like says the character's perspective, so it's nice it just jumps around so much. It was a sunny morning with lacy clouds drifting high overhead. It's hard to get to know you when you fawn upon me so, my prince. They walked together along a terraced hillside path. He clearly felt out of his league. First you've got to call me Romber. She raised her eyebrows, and her sepia eyes sparkled. I suppose that is a start. He flushed deeply as they continued to walk. You must have smitten me, Tessia. He plucked a field daisy from a spray of flowers on a grassy embankment and extended it to her. Since I'm the son of a great earl, I suppose I shouldn't allow that, should I? Tessia accepted the offering and spun the flower coyly in front of her plain but intelligent-looking face. She peeked around the petals at him, her expression growing warm and understanding. There are some advantages to living in exile, I suppose. Nobody notices who you're smitten with. Then she pointed a stern finger at him. Though I would respect you more if you did something to counteract the dishonor that's fallen on your family. Simply being an optimist hasn't achieved anything for years, has it? Trusting that everything will turn out right, thinking that you can do nothing more than sit here and complain? Talking is no substitute for doing. Surprised by the remark, Romber spluttered his response. But I've requested the ambassador, Pilru, file petition after petition. Won't my oppressed people try to overthrow the invaders, waiting for me to return? I expect to march back and reclaim my family name. Any time now. If you sit safely here and wait for your people to do your work for you, then you do not deserve to rule such a populace. Have you learned nothing from Leto Atreides? Tessia put her hands on her slender hips. If you ever intend to be an Earl, Romber, you must follow your passions and get better intelligence reports. He felt decidedly uncomfortable, stung by the truth in her words, but at a loss. How, Tessia? I have no army. Emperor Shaddam refuses to intervene, and the Landsraad, too. I was only granted limited amnesty when my family went renegade. What else can I do? Determined, she grasped his elbow as they continued their brisk walk. If you permit me, perhaps I may make some suggestions. They teach us many subjects on Wallach 9, including politics, psychology, strategy, facilitation. Never forget that I am Bene Gesserit, not a serving wench. I am intelligent and well-educated, and I see many things that you do not. Romber stumbled along with her, trying to regain his mental balance. Suspicious, he said. Is this something that the Sisterhood put you up to? Were you assigned as my concubine just to help me get Ix back? No, my prince. I won't pretend, though, that the Bene Gesserit wouldn't prefer to have a stable House Vernius back in power. Dealing with the Bene Tleilax is far more difficult and confusing. Tessia ran her fingers through her close, cropped brown hair, making it look as mussed as the prince's perpetual tangles. For myself, I would rather be the concubine of a great earl within the fabled Grand Palais on Ix than of an exiled prince who lives off the good graces of a generous duke. He swallowed hard, then plucked another field daisy and sniffed it himself. I would rather be that person too, Tessia. Right. Looking down from a castle balcony, Leto watched Romber and Tessia stroll hand in hand across a field of wildflowers, swaying in the ocean breeze. Leto felt a heavy ache in his heart, a warm envy toward his friend. The Ixian prince seemed to be walking on air, as if he had forgotten all about the troubles on his overthrown homeworld. He smelled Kalia's perfume behind him, a sweet flowery scent reminiscent of hyacinth and lily of the valley, but he hadn't heard her approach. He looked back at her and wondered how long she had been standing there, watching him stare down at the inseparable lovers. "She's good for him," Kalia said. "I never had much fondness for the Bene Gesserit before this, but Tessia is an exception." Leto chuckled. "He does seem quite taken with her, a testament to sisterhood seducing training." Kalia cocked her head. She wore a jewel-studded comb in her hair, and had taken particular care to apply the most flattering touch of makeup. He had always found her beautiful, but at this moment she seemed aglow. "It takes more than the dueling practice, parades, and fishing trips to make my brother happy, or any man." Kalia stepped out onto the sunlit balcony with Leto, and he became uncomfortably aware of how alone they were. Back before the fall of Ix, when she had been the daughter of a powerful great house, Kalia Vernius had seemed a perfect match for Leto. Given time and the normal course of events, old Duke Paulus and Earl Dominic Vernius probably would have arranged a marriage, but things were much different now. He could not afford to become entangled with a young woman from a renegade house, a person who, in theory, carried a death sentence if she ever tried to become involved in imperial politics. As a noble daughter, Kalia could never become just a casual lover, like a girl from the village below Castle Caladan. But he couldn't deny his feelings. And wasn't a duke entitled to take a concubine if he wished? There was no shame in it for Kalia either, especially with her lack of prospects. "Well, Leto, what are you waiting for?" She stepped close to him, so that one of her breasts grazed his arm. Her perfume made him dizzy with pheromones. "You are the Duke. You can have anything you desire." Kalia drew out the last word. "And what makes you think there's anything I desire?" To his own ears, his voice sounded strangely hollow. Raising her eyebrows, she gave him a coy smile. "Surely you are accustomed to making difficult decisions by now?" He hesitated, frozen. Indeed, he thought, what am I waiting for? They both moved at the same time, and he took her warmly into his arms with a long-held sigh of relief and growing passion. From the time Leto was young, he remembered watching his father spend sunny days in the courtyard of Castle Caladan, where he would listen to the petitions, concerns, and well-wishes for the people. Old Paulus's bearish, bearded father had called it going about the business of being a duke. Leto carried on the tradition. A line of people trudged up by the step path to the open gates to participate in an archaic system in which the duke settled disputes. Though efficient legal systems existed in all the large cities, Leto did this for the opportunity to maintain contact with his people. He liked to respond personally to their complaints and suggestions. He found it better than any number of surveys, opinion polls, and reports from supposed experts. As he sat under the warm morning sun, he listened to one person after another. As the line shuffled forward, an old woman whose husband had gone to sea in a storm and never returned asked that he be declared dead, and went on to request Leto's blessing and dispensation to marry her husband's brother. The young Duke told her to wait a month on both accounts, after which he would approve her petition. A 10-year-old boy wanted to show Leto a seahawk he had raised from the time it was a chick. The large red-crested bird clutched the boy's leather-cuffed wrist, then flew up into the open air of the courtyard, circled, much to the terror of the sparrows nesting in the eaves, and came back to the boy when he whistled. Leto loved to focus his attentions on personal details here at home, where he could actually see how his decisions mattered to the lives of his people. The immense Imperium, supposedly spanning 1,000,000 worlds, seemed too abstract, too vast to matter much here. Still, the bloody conflicts on other worlds, such as between Ikaz and Grumman, or the ages-old animosity between House Atreides and House Harkonnen, affected their own populations in as personal a way as anything he saw here. Leto had long been eligible for marriage, very eligible, in fact, and other Landsraad members wanted to enter into an alliance with House Atreides and mingle bloodlines. Would it be one of the daughters of Armand Ikaz, or would some other family make him a better offer? He had to play the dynastic game his father had taught him. For years now, he'd longed for Caelia Vernius, but her family had fallen, her house gone renegade. A Duke of House Atreides could never marry such a woman. It would be political suicide. Still, that did not make Caelia any less beautiful or desirable. Romber, happy with Tessia, had suggested that Leto take Caelia as his ducal concubine. For Caelia, there would certainly be no shame in becoming the chosen lover of a duke. In fact, it would secure her precarious position here on Caladan, where she lived under a provisional amnesty with no guarantees. Next, a balding man with squinting eyes opened a smelly basket. A pair of house guards closed in on him, but moved back when he lifted out a warm, reeking fish that must have been dead for days. Flies buzzed around it. When Leto frowned, wondering what insult this could be, the fisherman blanched, suddenly realizing the impression he had made. "Oh, no, 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 my Lord Duke. This ain't an offering, no. Look ye, this fish has sores. All my catch in the southern sea had sores." Indeed, the belly of the fish was rough and leprous. "The sea kelp rafts out there are dying, and they stink to the heavens. Something's wrong, and I thought ye should know about it." Leto looked over at Thufir Hawat, calling on the old warrior to use his mentat skills. "A plankton bloom, Thufir?" Hawat scowled, his mind racing, and then he nodded. "Likely killed off the seaweed, which is now rotting, spreading disease among the fish." Leto looked at the fisherman, who hurriedly covered his basket and held it behind his back to keep the smell far away from the Duke's chair. "Thank you, sir, for bringing this to our attention. We'll have to burn the dead kelp islands, maybe add some nutrients to the water to restore a proper plankton and algae balance." "Sorry about the stink, my Lord Duke." The fisherman fidgeted. One of Leto's guards took the basket and, holding it at arm's length, carried it outside the gates where the sea breezes would absorb the odor. "Without you, I might not have learned about the problem for weeks. You have our gratitude." Despite Caladan's excellent satellites and weather stations, Leto often learned information more accurately and swiftly through the people rather than these mechanisms. The next woman wanted to give him her prized chickens. Then 2 men were disputing the boundaries of Pundi rice fields and dickering over the value of an orchard lost by flood when a crumbling dike spilled water into the lowlands. An old lady presented Leto with a thick sweater she had knitted herself. Next, a proud father wanted Leto to touch the forehead of his newborn daughter. The business of being a duke. Right. Tessia eavesdropped outside the sitting area of the castle apartment she shared with Romber, while Leto and the prince discussed imperial politics, the embarrassing vandalism of Carino monuments, the declining health of Baron Harkonnen, the escalating and unpleasant conflict between Moritani and Ikaz, even with Sardaukar peacekeeping troops in place on Grumman, and the continued efforts of Leto's diplomatic corps to interject a note of reason to the situation. The conversation eventually turned to the tragedies that had befallen House Vernius, how long it had been since the overthrow of Ix. Expressing resentment for this had become routine for Romber, though he never found the courage to take the next step toward reclaiming his birthright. Safe and content on Caladan, he had given up hoping for revenge, or at least had put it off for another undetermined day. By now, Tessia had had enough. While still at the mother's school, she'd read thick files on House Vernius. Her knowledge of the history and politics of technology was a plans within plans. And politics of technology was a common interest with Romber. Even knowing all the sisterhood's plans within plans, she felt as if she'd been made for him, and therefore obligated to nudge him into action. She hated to see him stuck. Wearing a floor-length black and yellow calice dress, Tessia placed a silver tray with flagons of dark beer on the table between the men. She spoke up, surprising them with her interruption. "I've already promised you my help, Romber. Unless you intend to do something about the injustice to your house, don't complain about it for another decade." Shoot. Lost my place again. Give me just a minute to find it. I know we were close to 200. Just don't remember exactly where. Yeah, I think this is the one. Okay. There we go. Yep, I found it. Just give me another second. Thing about the injustice to your house, don't complain about it for another decade. Page 174. Raising her chin arrogantly, Tessia spun about. I, for one, don't want to hear it. Leto saw the flash in her intense, wide-set eyes. In astonishment, he watched her leave the room with only a faint rustle of her dress. Well, Romber, I expected a Bene Gesserit to be more circumspect. Is she always so blunt? Romber looked stunned. He picked up his beer and swallowed a gulp. How in only a few weeks did Tessia figure out exactly what I needed to hear? A fire burned in his eyes, as if the concubine had merely provided the spark for the tinder that had been piling up inside him for so long. Maybe you've been too kind all these years, Leto, making me overly comfortable while my father stays in hiding, while my people remain enslaved. He blinked. It's not going to turn out for the best all by itself, is it? Leto stared at him for a long moment. No, my friend. No, it isn't. Romber could not ask Leto to send massive forces on his behalf, because that would invite open warfare between House Atreides and the Bene Tleilax. Leto had already risked everything to prevent that from happening. Right now, he was just a piece of flotsam without a purpose. The prince's face darkened with determination. Maybe I ought to make a grand gesture, return to my homeworld. Take a formal diplomatic frigate with a full escort. I could rent one, I suppose, and land it in the port of entry Canyon on Ix. I'd publicly reclaim my name, demand that the Tleilaxi renounce their illegal seizure of our planet. He huffed. What do you think they'd say to that? Don't be foolish, Romber. Leto shook his head, wondering if his friend was serious or not. They'd take you prisoner and perform medical experiments on your body. You'd end up in a dozen pieces and a dozen different axolotl tanks. The million hells, Leto. What else am I going to do? Distracted and disturbed, the prince stood up. If you'll excuse me, I need to think. He trudged up a low riser to his private bedchamber and shut the door. Leto stared after his friend for a long moment, sipping his drink before returning to his private study and the piled inventory, documents awaiting his inspection and signature. Watching from an upstairs balcony, Tessia flittered down the winding stairs and slid open the bedroom door. Inside, she found Romber on the bed, staring at a picture of his parents on the wall. Kalia had painted it herself, longing for the days in the Grand Palais. In the picture, Dominic and Shondo Vernius were dressed in full regalia, the bald Earl in a white uniform with purple and copper Ixian helixes adorning the collar, and she in a billowing lavender myrrh silk gown. Tessia massaged his shoulders. It was wrong of me to embarrass you in front of the Duke. I'm sorry. He saw the tenderness and compassion in her sepia gaze. Why apologize? You're right, Tessia, though it's difficult for me to admit it. Maybe I'm ashamed. I should have done something to avenge my parents. To avenge all of your people, and to free them. She heaved an exasperated sigh. Romber, my true prince, do you want to be passive, defeated, and complacent, or triumphant? I'm trying to help you. Romber felt her surprisingly strong hands working expertly at his knotted muscles, loosening them, warming them. Her touch was like a soothing drug, and he was tempted to sleep so that he could forget his troubles. He shook his head. I gave up without a fight, didn't I? The concubine's fingers worked down his spine to the small of his back, arousing him. That doesn't mean you can't fight again. Right. With a deeply puzzled expression, Kalia Vernius brought a shiny black packet to her brother. It has our family crest on it, Romber. Just came from a courier in Cala City. Her sister had green eyes and a copper dark hair held back by glazed shell combs. Her face had grown into the lush beauty of womanhood with the soft edges of youth. She reminded Romber of their mother, Shondo, who had once been a concubine of Emperor Elrud's. Perplexed, the prince gazed at the helix on the package, but saw no other markings. Dressed in common, comfortable clothes, Tessia came up behind Romber while he used a small fishing knife to cut open the parcel. His brow wrinkled as he brought out a sheet of Redulian paper with lines, triangles, and dots on it. Then he caught his breath. It looks like a sub rosa massage. Sorry. Looks like a Sub Rosa message, an Ixian battle code written in a geometrical cipher. Kalia pursed her lips. Father taught me the complexities of business, but little of military matters. I didn't think I needed them. Can you decode it, my prince? Tessia asked in a voice that made Romber wonder if his Bene Gesserit concubine also had special translation skills. He scratched his tousled blonde hair, then reached for a notepad. Let me see. My tutor used to beat the codes into my head, but it's been years since I've thought about them. Romber sat cross-legged on the floor, then began scribbling the Gallic alphabet in a scrambled order he'd memorized. He scratched out lines and recopied the pattern more carefully. With old memories coming back to him, he stared at the paper, and his pulse quickened. Someone with inside knowledge had undoubtedly prepared this, but who? Next, Romber took a ruler and, measuring carefully, made a new sheet into a grid. Across the top, he wrote the scrambled alphabet, one letter inside each square. Then added a pattern of coding dots, placing the mysterious message next to his decryption sheet. He lined up dots with letters, then transcribed one word at a time. Vermilion Hells! Prince Romber Vernius, rightful Earl of Ix, the Tleilaxu usurpers torture or execute our people for perceived infractions, then use the corpses for horrible experiments. Our young women are also stolen in the darkness. Our industries remain overrun by invaders. There is no justice for Ix, only memories, hopes, and slavery. We long for the day when House Vernius can crush the invaders and once again free us. With all due respect, we request your assistance. Please help us. The note was signed by Kater Pilru of the Freedom Fighters of Ix. Romber leaped to his feet and hugged his sister. It's the ambassador's son, Kalia. Do you remember? Eyes lit with half-forgotten happiness. She remembered how the dark-haired twins had flirted with her. Nice-looking young man. His brother became a guild navigator, didn't he? Romber grew silent. For years, he'd known such things were happening on his world, but he'd avoided thinking about it, hoping the problems would go away. How could he contact the rebels on Ix? As an exiled prince without a house, how could he address the tragedy? He hadn't been willing to consider all of the possibilities. Mark my words, Romber vowed. I'm going to do something about this. My people have waited too long. He pulled back from his sister, and his gaze moved around to Tessia, who stood watching him. I'd like to help, she said. You know that. Romber drew his concubine and his sister to him in a great bear hug. Finally, he had a sense of purpose. Alright, let me just get some water before we continue on to the next part. Give me just 1 second. Alright, shall pick it up from there.
Yes, my lord.
Okay. Finally, he had a sense of purpose. Should be fine. Mysterious little bit of frame drop, but nothing bad. Okay. Page 177. To learn about the universe, one must embark on a course of discovery where real danger exists. Where real dangers exist. Education cannot impart this discovery. It is not a thing to be taught and used or put away. It has no goals. In our universe, we consider goals to be end products, and they are deadly if one becomes fixated on them. Friedrich Gina's Philosophy of the Swordmaster. Transport ornithopters carried the Ginaz students in groups, descending as they flew along the edge of a forbidding new island, beside black lava cliffs worn slick over the centuries by cascading waterfalls. The mounds of sharp rock rose out of the water like a rotten tooth, without jungles, without greenery, without apparent habitation. Surrounded by deep, treacherous water, the mountainous island, nameless except for its military designation, lay at the eastern end of the archipelago. Ah, look, another tropical paradise, Rezer said in a dry tone, peering through one of the small portholes. Crowded beside his classmates, Duncan Idaho knew this place would only hold new ordeals for all of them. But he was ready. The Thopter gained altitude and flew up the windward side of the curving mouth of a steep crater. Smoke and ash still coughed out of vents, adding a heavy, hot pall to the humid air. The pilot circled around so they all could identify a single shining Thopter landed on the crater rim. The small craft would be used in some part of their training, no doubt. Duncan could not guess what might be in store for them. The Thopter cruised to the base of the volcano, where jutting elbows of cracked reefs and steaming fumaroles form their camp. Colorful, self-erecting tents dotted flat surfaces of the lava rock, encircling a larger compound. No amenities whatsoever. When they landed, many of the students rushed out to choose their tents, but Duncan could not see how any one was preferable to another. The tall swordmaster waiting for them had leathery skin, a mane of thick gray hair that hung to the middle of his back, and haunting eyes set deeply into bony sockets. With a twinge of awe, Duncan recognized the legendary warrior, Mord Kur. As a child on Hagao, Kur had been the sole survivor of his massacred mining village. He'd lived as a feral boy in the forested cliffs, taught himself to fight, then infiltrated the bandit gang that had destroyed his village. After gaining their trust, he single-handedly slew the leader and all the bandits, then marched off to join the Emperor Sardaukar. He had served as Elrud's personal swordmaster for years before retiring to the academy on Ginaz. After making them recite the swordmaster's pledge in unison, the legendary warrior said, "I have killed more people than any of you pups have ever met. Pray that you do not become one of them. If you learn from me, then I will have no excuse to slay you. I don't need any incentive to learn from him, Rassur said to Duncan out of the corner of his mouth. The old man heard the muttered words and snapped his glance over to the red-headed student. In the back of the group, Trin Kronos, one of the other Grumman trainees, though much less friendly, snickered, then silenced himself. As Mord Kor held Rassur with his piercing gaze, waiting, Duncan cleared his throat and took one step forward. Swordmaster Kor, he said that none of us needs an incentive to learn from a great man like you, sir. He gripped the hilt of the old Duke's sword. No one requires an excuse to learn from a great man. Kor swiveled around to look at all the students. You know why you are here? Here, on Ginaz, I mean. Because this is where Jul Noret started everything, the dark-skinned trainee from Al Danab said promptly. Jul Noret didn't do anything, Kor said, shocking them all. He was a tremendous swordmaster, skilled in 93 fighting methods. He knew about weapons, shields, tactics, and hand-to-hand combat. A dozen other skilled fighters followed him like disciples, begging Noret to teach them advanced skills, but the great fighter always refused, always put it off with the promise he would train them when the time was right, and he never did. One night a meteor struck the ocean offshore and sent a wave crashing into the island where Jul Noret lived. The water flattened his hut and killed him in his sleep. It was all his followers could do not to recover his body. That mummified relic they'll be proud to show you back on the administration island. But sir, if Jul Noret taught nothing, why was the Ginaz school founded in his name? Rassur said. Because his disciple vowed not to make the same mistake. Remembering all the skills they'd wanted to learn from Noret, they formed an academy where they could teach the best candidates all the fighting techniques they might require. The ash-choked breezes ruffled his hair. So are you all ready to learn how to become swordmasters? The students answered with a resounding yes. Kaur shook his long gray mane and smiled. The gust of ocean wind sounded like sharp fingernails scraping the lava cliffs. Good. We will begin with 2 weeks of studying poetry. Poetry. All right. In the minimal shelter of their colorful tents, the trainees slept on the rocks, cold during the night, baking hot during the day. Gray clouds of spewed ash blocked the sun. They sat without chairs, ate dried and salted food, drank tepid water that had been stored in old casks. Everything had an aftertaste of sulfur. No one complained about the hardships. By then, swordmaster trainees knew better. In the rough environment, they learned about metaphors and verse. Even on ancient Terra, honor-bound samurai warriors had valued their prowess in composing haikus as much as they valued their skill with a blade. When Mord Kor stood on a rock beside a steaming hot springs and recited ancient epics, the passion in his voice stirred the students' hearts. Finally, when the old man saw that he had made them all teary-eyed, he smiled and clapped his hands. Jumping down from the rock, Kor announced, "Success. Good. Now it is time to learn fighting." Right? Clad in flexalloy chainmail, Duncan rode astride an enormous armored turtle that kept snapping at its reins and its rider. Lashed into his saddle, legs sprouted to encompass the broad, plated shell, he balanced a wooden pike with a blunted metal tip. He held the shaft over one wrist and stared across at the three similarly armored opponents. The fighting turtles were hatched from stolen eggs and raised in cove pens. The sluggish behemoths reminded Duncan of when he'd had to fight while wearing the thick plate armor. But their horned jaws could slam shut like blast doors, and when they had a mind to, the turtles could lurch forward with hellish speed. Duncan could see from chipped and broken plates on the shells that these beasts were veterans of more combat than he had ever seen. Duncan rapped his lance on the turtle's thick shell, thumping like a drummer. His beast stomped forward toward Resser's mount, thrashing its monstrous head from side to side and snapping at anything in reach. "I'm coming to unseat you, Resser!" But Duncan's turtle chose that moment to stop, and no amount of urging could get it to move again. The other turtles wouldn't cooperate either. The Turtle Joust was the 9th fighting event in a decathlon the students had to pass before they were admitted to the next level of the class. Though through 5 grueling days, breathing ash-thick air, Duncan had never placed lower than 3rd. In swim fighting, long jumping, crossbows, slingshots, javelins, aerobic weightlifting, knife throwing, and tunnel crawling. Throughout, standing on his high rock, Mordkor had watched the proceedings. Resser, who had become Duncan's friend and rival, also achieved a respectable score. The other Grumman students formed a clique of their own, clustering around the bullyish leader Trin Kronos, who seemed immensely full of himself and his heritage, though his demonstrated fighting abilities did not set him much apart from the others. Kronos crowed about his proud life serving House Moritani, but Resser rarely talked about his home or family. He was more interested in squeezing every bit of ability from Ginaz. Each night, deep into the hours of darkness, Duncan and Resser would set to work in the base tent's library with a pile of film books. Ginaz students were expected to learn military history, battle strategies, and personal fighting techniques. Mordkor had also impressed upon them the study of ethics, literature, philosophy, and meditation. All the things he had not been able to learn as a feral boy in the forested cliffs of Hagal. In evening sessions with the sword masters, Duncan Idaho had memorized the Great Convention, whose rules for armed conflict formed the basis of imperial civilization following the Bulgarian Jihad. Out of such moral and ethical thinking, Ginaz had formulated the code of the warrior. Now, while struggling to control his curmudgeonly turtle, Duncan rubbed his red eyes and coughed. His nostrils burned from the ash in the air, and his throat felt scratchy. Around him, the ocean roared against the rocks. Fumaroles hissed and spat rotten egg stink into the air. After constant, ineffective prodding, Resser's turtle finally lunged forward, and the redhead had all he could do to remain seated and keep his blunted lance pointed in the right direction. Soon, all the turtles began to move, lumbering together in a slow-motion frenzy. Duncan dodged simultaneous pike thrusts from Resser and the second opponent, and struck out at the third with the butt of his own weapon. The blunt end of the lance bashed the student squarely on the chest armor, sending him sprawling. The downed trainee landed heavily on the rough ground, then rolled out of the way to avoid the snapping turtles. Duncan flattened himself against the shell of his mount, evading another thrust from Resser. Then Duncan's turtle halted in its tracks to defecate, which took a long time. Glancing around, helpless in his saddle, Duncan saw the remaining mounted adversaries go after Resser, who defended himself admirably. While his turtle completed its business, Duncan waited for precisely the right moment, positioning himself to one side on the hard shell, as near to the other combatants as he could get. Just as Resser countered with his own weapon and knocked down the other combatant, he raised his lance in a show of triumph, as Duncan knew he would. At that very moment, Duncan reached over and slammed his pike into the redhead's side, tumbling Resser off the turtle. Only Duncan Idaho remained, the victor. He dismounted, then helped Resser climb to his feet and brushed sand from his chest and legs. A moment later, Duncan's turtle finally began to move, lumbering about in search of something to eat. Your body is your greatest weapon, Mordkor said. Before you can be trusted with a sword in battle, you must learn to trust your body. But Master, you taught us the mind is our greatest weapon, Duncan interrupted. Body and mind are one, Kor responded, his voice as sharp as his blade. What is one without the other? The mind controls the body controls the mind. He strutted along the rugged beach, sharp rocks crunching under his calloused feet. Strip off your clothes, all of you, down to your shorts. Take off your shoes. Leave all weapons on the ground. Without questioning orders, the students peeled off their clothing. Gray ash continued to fall around them, and brimstone gases sighed up from fumaroles like hell's breath. After this final test, you can all be quit of me, and of this island. Mordkor pursed his lips in a stern expression. Your next destination has a few more flowers and amenities. Some of the students gave a ragged cheer, tinged with uneasiness about the ordeal they were soon to face. Since all of you passed a Thopter pilot competency test before coming to Ginaz, I'll keep my explanation brief. Kur gestured up the steep slope to the high crater lip, surrounded in hazy gray murk. A craft awaits you on top. You saw it on your way in. The first to reach it can fly away to your clean and comfortable new barracks. Coordinates are already locked into the piloting console. The rest of you will walk back down the mountain and camp here on the rocks again, without tents and without food. He narrowed the eyes on his ancient face. Now go! The students raced forward, using their energy reserves to get a head start. Although Duncan wasn't the fastest student off the mark, he chose his route more carefully. Steep cliff bands blocked some paths halfway up the sheer cone, while other couloirs tapered off to dead ends before reaching the top. Some gullies looked tempting. Thin streams and waterfalls promised a slippery, uncertain ascent. Upon seeing the Thopter high up on the crater rim during their initial approach, he'd studied the slope with avid interest, preparing himself. Now he drew upon everything he had observed, and he started up. As the terrain steepened, Duncan gained on those ahead of him, skillfully choosing gullies or couloirs, scrambling up rugged, knobby, conglomerate rocks, while others got sidetracked into easy-looking gravel chutes that crumbled beneath their feet and sent them tumbling back down. He ran along connecting ridges and rounded shoulders that did not lead directly to the top, but provided easier ground and permitted a faster ascent. Years ago, when he'd raced for survival in the rugged Forest Guard Preserve on Gidi Prime, Raban had tried to hunt him down. By comparison, this was easy. The rough lava rock was sharp beneath Duncan's bare feet, but he had an advantage over most of his fellow students. Calluses developed by years of walking without shoes on the beaches of Caladan. He skirted a hot spring and climbed a fissure that gave him precarious hand and footholds. He had to wedge himself into the crack, searching the protrusions and crannies he could use to haul himself up another body length. Some of the rotten rock broke loose and tumbled. Elsewhere, he had no doubt that Trin Kronos and some of the other self-centered candidates would be doing their best to sabotage the competition, rather than focusing on increasing their own pace. By sunset, he reached the lip of the volcano, the first in his class. He had run without resting, climbed dangerous scree slopes, chosen his route carefully but without hesitation, with other competitors not far behind him, coming up all sides of the cone. He leaped over a stream, vent, and ran to the waiting ornithopter. As soon as he spotted the craft, he looked over his shoulder to see High Resser stumble up close behind him. The redhead's skin was scratched and covered with ash. "Hey, Duncan!" The air was thick with fumes and dust belched out from the crater. The volcano rumbled. Close to victory, Duncan put on a burst of speed, closing the distance to the thopter. Resser, seeing he had no chance of winning, dropped back, panting, and gracefully acknowledged his friend's victory. At the crater's far rim, Trin Kronos pulled himself up from an alternate route, his face flushed and angry at seeing Duncan so close to the waiting thopter. When he saw Resser, his fellow Grumman student staggered to a breathless halt and concede, Kronos looked even more furious. Though they came from the same world, Kronos often went out of his way to express scorn for Resser, to humiliate the redhead, and make his life miserable. In this class, it was survival of the fittest, and many of the students had developed an intense dislike for each other. Just watching the way Kronos harassed his fellow Grumman trainee, Duncan had formed a harsh opinion of the spoiled son of a nobleman. Once Duncan flew off in the thopter, Kronos would probably wait for his Grumman friends, and they would pummel Resser to vent their own frustrations. As Duncan placed one foot in the empty craft, he reached a decision. "Hi, Resser. If you can get here before I strap in and take off, I'm sure the thopter will carry two of us." Farther away, Trin Kronos put on a burst of speed. Duncan snapped on his safety harness, touched the tractor bar to shorten the wings for jet boost takeoff, while Resser stared in disbelief. "Come on!" Grinning, the redhead found new energy. He sprinted forward as Duncan slid the starter switch into position. In his years of service to the Duke, he had been taught to fly by some of the best pilots in the Imperium. Now he went through the motions smoothly. Railing against Duncan's decision to break the rules, Kronos raced forward, his feet kicking up broken rock. The Thopter's instruments panel flashed on. An illuminated orange box told Duncan the jet pods were armed, and he heard the low, powerful hiss of the turbines. Resser leaped onto the Thopter skids just as Duncan raised the vehicle with the jet assists. Panting, the redhead grabbed the edge of the cockpit door and held on. He gulped in lungfuls of air. Seeing he would never make it to the vessel, Trin Kronos stooped to snatch up a jagged, fist-sized lava rock and threw it, striking Resser's exposed hip. Duncan depressed a glowing action sequence button, and the wings snapped up and down, climbing high above the lava cap of the volcano. The jet pods kicked in, and the wings went into lift altitude. He let up on the power. Resser hauled himself all the way inside in a tangle of arms and legs. Wheezing and out of breath, he wedged himself into the meager open space beside Duncan in the cockpit and began to laugh. The wind of the ornithopter's beating wings blasted the disappointed Kronos. Left behind, the young man hurled another rock, which bounced harmlessly off the Plaz window shield. Duncan waved cheerfully and tossed Kronos a hand light from the Thopter's supply kit. The crewman caught it, expressing no gratitude for the assistance in the growing dark. Far behind him, the other students, fatigued and aching, would return to camp on foot to spend a miserable, cold night out in the open. Duncan boosted power, extended the wings to their fullest setting. The sun sank below the horizon, leaving a red-orange glow across the water. Darkness began to fall like a heavy curtain over the string of islands to the west. "Why did you do that for me?" Resser asked, wiping sweat off his brow. "This was supposed to be a solo test. The Swordmasters certainly didn't teach us to help each other." "No," Duncan said with a smile. "It's something I learned from the Atreides." He adjusted the instrument panel illumination to a lambent glow and flew by starlight to the coordinates of their next island. We'll pick it up from there. I hope you enjoyed a bit of Dune House Harkonnen tonight. Next up, we're going back to the Baron and the Sisterhood and Peter DeVries, stuff like that, which we'll look forward to very soon.
has come to our family.
I remember days when the sun shone and laughter could be heard from the tavern. In time, you will know the tragic extent of my failings. A fortune, waiting to be spent. A handsome reward for a task well performed. Curious is the trap maker's art, his efficacy unwitnessed by his own eyes. Press this advantage. Give them no quarter. Precision and power. A decisive pummeling. A devastating blow. decimated. As the fiend falls, a faint hope blossoms. Brilliant confluence of skill and purpose. Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all. Formation is broken. Maintain the offensive. Exposed to a killing blow. Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles. Singular strike. A trifling victory, but a victory nonetheless.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip,
We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash has made a name. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day.
where there's a whip, there's a way. 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 Left, right, left, right, left. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Left, right.
Slowly, gently. This is how a life is taken. Impressive. Confusion, nerves, and panic. Prodigious size alone does not dissuade the sharpened blade. Success so clearly in view. Or is it merely a trick of the light? time to perform beyond one's limits. The blood quickens. Powerful blow. Such a terrible assault cannot be left unanswered. Mortality clarified in a single strike. Inspiration and improvement. Waits for the slightest lapse in concentration. Perched at the very precipice of oblivion. Death is patient. It will wait. obliterated. Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer. From becoming unwound. Unbalanced. Uncertainty, the birthplace of dread. perhaps a turning point. Surgical precision. The horror. The bigger the beast, the greater the glory. Packs laden with loot are often low on supplies. There is a great horror beneath the manor. A crawling chaos that must be destroyed. pace out the halls of your lineage once familiar, now foreign. The way is lit. The path is clear. We require only the strength to follow it. To the pit. Another one falls. match is struck. A blazing star is born. Packs laden with loot are often low on supplies. Be gone, fiend! In Radiance, may we find victory. Decimated. Executed with impunity. The light, the promise of safety. As the light gains purchase, spirits are lifted, and purpose is made clear. Another abomination, cleansed from our lands. Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles. Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all. Press this advantage. Give them no quarter. Annihilated. As the fiend falls, a faint hope blossoms. The shifted corridors and sloped walls of our ancestry are beginning to feel familiar. A troubling shortage of ale and a notable absence of good humor. To prosecute our war against the swine, we must first scout their squalid homes. As the light gains purchase, spirits are lifted, and purpose is made clear. Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all. Be wary. Triumphant pride precipitates a dizzying fall. Glittering gold, trinkets and baubles, paid for in blood. the blood quickens. Monstrous size has no intrinsic merit, unless inordinate exsanguination be considered a virtue. These nightmarish creatures can be felled. They can be beaten. Well struck. Decimated. the fiend falls, a faint hope blossoms. Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles. Ghoulish horrors, brought low and driven into the mud. A handsome reward for a task well performed. Another abomination cleansed from our lands. A powerful blow. A death by inches. Press this advantage. Give them no quarter. Another one falls. This expedition at least promises success. The match is struck. A blazing star is born. The light, the promise of safety. Masterfully executed. Obliterated. Their formation is broken. Maintain the offensive. In Radiance, may we find victory. The Swine Folk's labyrinth may yet prove to be navigable. A new enemy. Insipid and incurable.
Armageddon flame. The shame, the ones who died without a name. Hear the dogs howling out of key to a hymn called Faith and Misery.
Alright, catch you next time.